Shalom, Israel. More Shabbat Shalom, Israel. It's your brother Marcus G back with yet another Truth for Thought. First and foremost, I must give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High. I must give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High. Secondly, I know y'all hadn't seen me in 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks. This will be the third week, and I'm bringing out a lesson. I took a break, and I wanted to put a message, a video up about it. However, the suite that I was in, the internet was like very spotty, so it wouldn't allow. It wasn't stable enough for me to upload the video. To let you all know that I'm taking a 2-week break, but that I would be coming this week to bring out part 2 to Daniel 7, the breakdown of Daniel 7. All right. Thirdly, the prayer list. Cannot go any Truth for Thought without putting up the prayer list. We're going to start it off with King Ricky, also known as Pretty Ricky. Please keep our beloved brother in prayer. We also have Queen Piper. Please keep her in prayer. Queen India. Please keep them in prayer. Queen Orlando. Please keep her in prayer, as well as Queen Roxanne. Keep her in prayer as well. Queen Roxanne experienced 2 losses. Pretty much back to back here in the last month. We also want to keep the Ellis family, King Charles Ellis Sr., Queen Sydney Ellis, and King Charles Ellis Jr. in prayer. King Kemar, all praise to the Most High. My queen told me that you'd be reaching out to me. I was waiting for you, King. Keep him in prayer, as well as my spiritual grandma, Queen Raya. I ask Israel that you keep them in prayer, as well as my spiritual aunt, Queen Shay, both my spiritual moms, Queen Valerie and Queen Paula, as well as Queen Crystal, King Josh, Queen Ashley, and Queen Brittany. Our couples, married couples, I ask Israel that you keep in prayer, King Ben and Queen Cassandra, King Jermaine and Queen Kenya, King Greg, Queen Sharon, King Orbia, and Queen Melinda. I know it's rough right now for y'all. We are definitely keeping you all in prayer. King Orbia and Queen Melinda, King Diamond and Queen LaShonda, and King Brian and Queen Shavonda. I want to add a married couple this Sabbath to the prayer list for the Truth for Thoughts. This couple also, oh no, I see them already. Also, this couple, they were at the royal gathering. They are definitely making strides in the truth. Israel, I ask that you keep in prayer King Josh and Queen Marissa. And I want to thank you all, King Josh and Queen Marissa, that for what you all did just a couple of days ago. For that, I say all praise to the Most High, keeping you all in prayer as well as all of my beloved brethren and sisters in the truth. We have Queen Carly. We have Queen Alicia, Queen Doris. Oh my goodness, her name is on the tip of my tongue. I just cannot remember it right. It just won't come to me. King Yada's queen, as well as my beloved King Yagideon, King Yada, King Gino, King Mike. And of course, I ask that you keep me and my queen, Queen Ashley, in prayer as well. Now, with that, because we got a lot. We got into some of the meat in part 1 of Daniel chapter 7 breakdown, but we got a lot to go to. First, I want to reiterate some, not all, but some of the foundational scriptures for part 1 as they also apply to part 2. So let me share my screen to the Bible here. And we're going to start in the Bible. And we're going to start at Jeremiah chapter 28. Jeremiah chapter 28. We're going to get verses 7 and 8. Again, we're going over a revelation to Daniel in Daniel chapter 7. And we left off at Daniel 7 and 7. So we're going to go over the foundational scriptures that I want to rehash. And then we're going to start with a quick summation of part 1 and then just dive right into part 2. So we're starting at Jeremiah 28, verses 7 and 8. Also, I'm going to say, I know I said this for part 1. I'm going to say it again. Have pen, pad, and your Bible ready. Pen, pad, and your Bible. I will be looking at some things of the world that just prove the word to be true. And I'll have the links to everything in the description as always. All right. So definitely have pen, pad, and Bible and Apocrypha. 1611 KJV with the Apocrypha. Have it on the ready. We start now Jeremiah 28 verses 7 and 8. Nevertheless, hear thou now this word that I speak into thine ears and in the ears of all the people. This is in regards to a revelation at the Most High. This is basically his words to people he's given revelations to. Verse 8, the prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both. Remember this. This is a key verse. They prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms of war and of evil and of pestilence. The greater majority of Daniel 7 is a revelation of many great countries and kingdoms. All of them are of war and of evil. So this is a key foundational scripture for both parts 1 and part 2. I want to go from there to Habakkuk chapter 2. Habakkuk chapter 2. And I'm going to we got a lot to cover because we stopped at verse 7. It's like 20. We got about 15 more verses to go. And I'm breaking them down as small as I possibly can, to the degree that I possibly can. So we're going to go to Habakkuk chapter 2, and we're going to get verses 2 and 3. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision. The reason that we're able to read certain revelations that were given to people like Daniel and to people like Ezra and to people like John. Also, Yahweh, you will find that out today. There are revelations that he was actually prophesying things that these people that were revealed to these people. And we're going to go into that today. All right. So this was a direct commandment from the Most High. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, meaning this is a prophecy. But at the end it shall speak, meaning when its prophecy comes to fruition, it's going to prove true. And shall not lie. Though it tarry, meaning although it's not happening right now, today, wait for it because it will surely come. It will not tarry, meaning when that prophecy starts to come into fruition, it's going to come expeditiously. It's not going to tarry. It's not going to hold back any longer. All right. So let's go from there to, I want to go to Daniel chapter 2. Let's go to Daniel chapter 2. And of course, and I'm going to say again, this is not all the foundational scriptures that we have for part 1, but the ones that definitely, the ones for part 1 were definitely applicable to part 1. They are also applicable to part 2. I'm just going into this with the understanding that if you're seeing part 2, you saw part 1. So you saw the ones that were excluded and you have the understanding of those. So we're going to go to Daniel chapter 2 and we're going to get verse 21. Daniel chapter 2 and verse 21. And it reads, and he changeth the times and the seasons. This is in reference to the Most High. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. Now, in part 1, I said, if you would, write that word kings down, and under it, I want you to write nations, empires, and I'm going to even go as far today as to say kingdoms. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. I want you to just definitely keep in mind the Most High removeth kings and setteth up new kings. These kings rule nations. They rule empires. They rule kingdoms. Remember that, because in Daniel 7, and we're going to go over the summation, you're going to see where the Most High set up and removed certain kings, certain nations, certain kingdoms, certain empires. All right. So let's go from there to Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 1. We're going to go to Proverbs chapter 21 and we're going to get verse 1. Now, this is in regards to those very same kings that lead these nations and empires and kingdoms, right? The king's heart is in the hand of the Most High. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of the water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. So when he sets these kings up that rule over these nations and empires and kingdoms, right? They do that which he wills. Even though everybody else on earth may not understand why they're doing what they're doing, understand it's at the Most High's will, who sets these kings up and removes them also as he sees fit. All right. Now let's go from there to Ecclesiasticus chapter 10 and verse 8. So we go into the book of Sirach, chapter 10 and verse 8. And it reads, because of unrighteous dealing, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. So when the Most High is removing these kings and setting up new kings, it's for a reason. Here's your reason. Here's your why. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches gotten by deceit. Now, in part 1, I went and I showed where these riches originated right with Israel and have been translated all throughout time, right? They've been, and the word translate here means transferred all throughout time. All right. So I left those verses out. I also left out Hosea 13, chapter 13, verse 7 and 8. It had a lot to do with part 1 because it mentioned a lion and a bear. Right. So now let's do a summation of part 1. And you'll see in this summation why I left that out. Right. The summation of part 1 was this. 1, we know it was a revelation, a revealing dream that Daniel had. All right. In this revealing dream, we read about 3. We read of the 4th, but didn't just really break down the 4th one down. But we read and broke down about 3 beasts. Now, that first beast, right? And I'm going to tell you now, it's a dominant people, a kingdom, an empire. That first beast or first dominant people or dominant kingdom or empire was referred to as a lion with eagle's wings. We examined that the first beasts were actually the Babylonians and their conquest of the Assyrians, which was the prior to the Babylonians. They were the dominant people, kingdom, or nation. All right. We did examine that the second beast or dominant people were the Persians and the Medes, referred to as a bear with 3 ribs in its mouth. Right. We examined that those 3 ribs were some previously conquered kingdoms, nations or empires in Egypt, Lydia, and Babylon, which was the first beast. So the second beast, the first beast had conquered the dominant people prior to them. So the Babylonians had conquered the Assyrians, right? Then the Babylonians had been conquered by the Persians and the Medes, or the second beast. Well, then came the third beast, and we examined if the third beast or dominant people were the Macedonian Empire or the Greeks, right? Referred to as a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads. And we saw that it was referred to as a leopard because of how quickly, extremely fast, the Greeks conquered the other lands and people. We also examined Alexander the Greek. I would not refer to him as the Great, as during his dominion, great evils ruled the land. Great evils like homosexuality, bestiality, things like that, came with Alexander the Greek, right? I will not refer to him as the Great. Now, his 4 heads, which were Alexander the Greek's generals, we also examined them in Ptolemy, Cassander, Lysicamus, and Seleucus. Now, I'll even go as far today. This is another little golden nugget for you if you read. If you come across this name in the Bible, right? Antiochus, he came to rulership through one of those 4 heads, one of those 4 generals in Seleucus. That's just a little nugget for you. So now, with that, let's go back to Daniel 7 and let's pick up where we left off. All right. Daniel 7, we're going to start at verse 7. All right. Starting at verse 7. Like I said, it's a lot of scripture, a lot of notes. Let's get into it. So let's start by reading Daniel chapter 7, verse 7. Because like I said, we read it, but we didn't just go into and break down this scripture. So let's start by reading the scripture. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. Remember that iron had great iron teeth. Now, I talked about what teeth are in part 1. That's more your military. So they had a great military, a very strong, it's compared to iron, a very strong military presence. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. You may want to write that down. I'm going to address that particular part for sure of this scripture. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Let's get into it. This was an empire that was dreadful. When Daniel saw it, it was diverse. It had 10 horns, right? I did say in part 1, this is the Roman Empire. How was it diverse? The Greeks joined with the Romans, kind of like the Persians and the Medes, right? Which is where you get the Roman Greco Empire, right? So I want to go to Daniel. We're going to go 5 chapters over. We're going to go to Daniel chapter 2. I want to get verse 40. All right. Because like I said, the Greeks, they had merged with the Romans, right? But remember when we read about the Greeks and how great they were, when they went and merged with the Romans, now you have a diversity, right? Again, you can read in Maccabees about when Antiochus showed something that we're going to talk about, but the democracy, we went over their Senate, right? They had a Senate. The Greeks did. But the Greeks merged with the Romans, thus the Roman-Greco War. So I want to get Daniel chapter 2 and verse 40. It says, "And the 4th kingdom shall be strong as iron." Remember I said, remember those iron teeth. "For as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. So this was how dreadful there were. When people heard that the Romans was coming, boy, it was a dreadful, dreadful thought that they would envision in their mind, a very barbaric type of warfare. But again, this is talking about the Romans and the Greeks together, right? The Greco-Roman Empire. So let's go back to Daniel chapter 7 and verse 7, right? Back to Daniel chapter 7 and verse 7. And I want to address this. Stamp the residue with the feet of it. What that means is others were taking on the Roman customs. You've probably heard, ruled with an iron fist. That's how this place is, right? They ruled with an iron fist. So I want to let's go look at something that Ezra mentioned. Let's go to second Esdras. We're going to go to second Esdras, and you're going to see that a lot of when I broke down part 1, you saw me looking at, because Esdras saw what Daniel saw with a little more detail. Then John saw things down to particular places, even more detail. So even in part 1, I looked at all 3 of these individuals and their revelations. You're going to see I'm going to come from Revelation again today, and something that John references as well. So let's go ahead and look at second Ezra. We're going to get chapter 12 and verses 11 through 14. Now, this is in regards to this Roman Greco Empire, right? Now, this is when Ezra's revelation is being broken down to him. Now, listen to this. The eagle whom thou sawest come up from the sea is the kingdom which was seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel, referencing back to the same thing. But it was not expounded upon unto him. But nothing was broken down in detail to Daniel. Therefore, now I declare it unto thee. So now the Most High is going to let Ezra know that which he didn't go into detail with Daniel. And again, we're going to read this down to verse 14. Behold, the days will come. Again, this is a prophecy, was a prophecy for Daniel, and even in Ezra's day was still a prophecy, that there shall rise up a kingdom upon earth, and it shall be feared above all the kingdoms that were before it. This fourth beast was so dreadful. It was feared greater than all the other kingdoms, greater than the Assyrians, greater than the Babylonians, greater than the Persians and the Medes, right? In the same shall 12 kings reign, one after another. That verse is a key. It is a key. So before I share my screen with something, I want to go back one chapter. We're going to go to 2nd Ezra chapter 11 and read verse 1. Then saw I a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle, which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. Let's talk about this 12. This 12. And notice this eagle keeps coming up. All right. You got this 12 and you got these eagles. Well, this 12 is directly associated with the Roman Greco Empire. So let me stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to share my screen to this right here, right? Because we're talking about the Greco-Roman Empire, right? The Greco-Roman civilization, also Greco-Roman culture or Greco-Latin culture, spelled Greco-Roman in the Commonwealth, as understood by modern scholars and writers, includes the geographical regions and countries that culturally and so historically, mean this is historically true, were directly and intimately influenced by the language, culture, government, and religion of the Greeks and the Romans, further proving that diversity, right? And that was prior to them actually conquering all these other peoples and nations, making it even more so diverse. All right. So I think there was something else I wanted to. It's right here. I want to drop down to, let me just keep going from here. All right. A better known term is classical antiquity. In exact terms, the area refers to the Mediterranean world. The extensive tracts of land centered on the Mediterranean and Black Sea basins, the swimming pool and spa of the Greeks and Romans, in which those peoples' cultural perceptions, ideologies, and sensitivities became dominant in classical antiquity. Again, they ruled with an iron fist. All right. That process was added by the universal adoption of Greek as the language of intellectual culture and commerce in Eastern Mediterranean, and of Latin as the language of public administration and of forensic advocacy, especially in Western Mediterranean. Greek and Latin were never the native language of most of the rural peasants who formed the great majority of the Roman Empire's population, but they became the language of the urban and cosmopolitan elites and the empire's lingua franca for those who live within the large territories and populations outside the Macedonian settlements. In fact, again, that third beast was the Macedonian Empire or the Greek Empire, and the Roman colonies. All Roman citizens of note and accomplishment, regardless of their ethnic extractions, look at how diverse this is, spoke and wrote in Greek or Latin. Examples include the Roman jurist and imperial chancellor Ulpian, who was of Phoenician origin, the mathematician and geographer Claudius Ptolemy, one of those four generals of the third of Alexander the Great, the Alexander the Greek's dominance of the Macedonian empire, who was of Greco-Egyptian origin. Look at how diverse this is. And the famous post-Constantine thinkers John Chrysostom and Augustine, who were of Syrian and Berber origins, respectively. Note to the historian Josephus Flavius, who was of Jewish origin, but spoke and wrote and greed. So this was a real diverse and dreaded empire, kingdom, right? This fourth beast, but there were many intricate parts to this fourth beast. And remember, we saw about the 12. Well, the 12 were the 12 Caesars. For those who don't know, who didn't know, and I'm not going to go into them, but I'm going to read their names. There was Julius Caesar. Right. Well, let's go back up here. Right. The 12 Caesars. All right. The Divina Caesarum is about the life of the Caesars, known as the 12 Caesars, is a set of 12 biographies of Julius Caesar and the first 11 emperors of the Roman Empire. So these were the first 12 emperors of the empire, the Roman Greco Empire. This is that 12 that Ezra was speaking of. Because again, Ezra got a little more clarity. It got a little more defined than it was with Daniel, right? Now, let's look at these 12. You got Julius Caesar, of course. You have Augustus. Let's look at this. Before he died, Julius Caesar had designated his great nephew, Caius Octavius, who would be named Augustus by the Roman Senate after becoming emperor. So this is the one of the 12. He's Augustus. He ended up Augustus Caesar, right? Then you have Tiberius. Tiberius is the third of the 12. Caligula. Claudius. Nero. Galba. Otho. Vitellius. Vespasian. Titus. Domitian are the 12. Now, I will leave the link for this for you to read about those 12 that Ezra were talking about, right? But Ezra was revealed the same empire, just with a little more detail, all right? I went here to further verify, further prove that this is the Roman Greco empire that Daniel saw in this fourth beast, right? Remember, and I keep saying beast, but I'm going to clarify that. The Bible clarifies it, right? So keep that in mind. Everywhere you see this beast in this revelation that Daniel had. So now let's go back to the Bible. Let me stop sharing my screen. Share it again back to the Bible. And I want to go back to Daniel 7. Back to Daniel 7. All right. Back to Daniel 7. Right. And you see it said, after this I saw in the night, verse 7. After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped with residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns, right? Let's read on to verse 8. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up from among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up. by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, because they were men, and a mouth speaking great things. Okay. All right. So let's look back at verse 7, right? I want y'all to understand with the Roman Greco, actually with the Greco, even with Antiochus, right? Antiochus said, come, let every man stop abiding by their own law, you abide by mine. This was the start of what you know today as democracy. Democracy. Yes, they had a senate in that particular empire, in that third beast. Also in this fourth beast, they also had a senate, right? We read a little bit from the world where it was talking about their senate, right? It briefly mentioned their senate. So let's go to First Maccabees, right? First Maccabees. We're still just looking at this fourth beast, right? First Maccabees. I want to go to chapter 8 and verse 1. Now Judas had heard of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men. This was a dreadful empire, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them. This is what made them so diverse, right? It was ride with us or get rolled over by us, right? Again, Antiochus, which was straight from one of the four heads of the previous empire, right? He even was like, you gonna roll with us. Stop all your laws. And I kind of went over that in part 1. Stop doing all the laws that you normally would. You're gonna be doing ours, right? Let's drop down to verse 18, because you saw here about Judas heard of these Romans, right? Let's drop down to verse 12, right? Well, verse 18. It says, and this is what Judas wanted to do, and to entreat them that they would take the yoke from them, from Israel. For they saw that the kingdom of the Grecians, that third beast, who now merged with this fourth beast, did oppress Israel with servitude. So this is what Judas did. They went therefore to Rome, which was a very great journey, and came into the Senate. Again, just like the Greeks had a Senate, so did the Romans. Again, with the Greeks came democracy. It continued with the Romans. But remember, this fourth beast had a whole bunch of horns, and it's a lot more than we're finna get into. This is just scratching the surface, just the beginning of actually breaking all of that down. Right? So they went to the Senate, where they spake and said, Judas Maccabeus with his brethren and the people of the Jews, not the Jewish, but the Jews, have sent us unto you to make a confederacy and peace with you. Now, why are they willing to join with this new beast? First, they wanted to get the yoke of oppression off of them, which the Greeks had put on them, the previous empire had put on them. Second, because of this, and that we might be registered with confederates and friends. They wanted to be treated as equal. And there's another reason. Verse 21. So that matter pleased the Romans well. And this is the copy of the epistle which the Senate wrote back again in tables of brass and sent to Jerusalem, that they might have by them a memorial of peace and confederacy. So to try to escape servitude, this is what Israel did. It's the truth. It's the truth. All right. So let's go back to Daniel, because you see that the premise of the previous, some of the premise of the previous beast, of that third beast being a Senate and democracy and things like that, they're carrying over into this fourth beast, which is a lot more complex, right? So let's go back to Daniel chapter 7, verse 7. All right. And we're going to look at these 10 horns, right? So let's look at Daniel 7 and 7. And we're going to start it. And it had 10 horns, right? And I want to ask a question now, just for anybody that may have already studied into this. What are these 10 horns? Do you know what these 10 horns are? Right? So let's look at verse 8. I considered the horns, and behold, there came among them another little horn. So I'm going to look at all these horns collectively. You got the first, you got the 10 horns, then you got another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn, in this little horn, were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. I love the Most High and how he does things. Remember that word great in this verse. Please remember that. So let's look at these 10 horns. I asked, and I kept on reading to kind of give a little time to see if anyone knew what those 10 horns were. Now, this is pre-recorded. Of course, I'll be in the live feed, and I'll get to see any and all answers. But we finna look at those 10 horns. Okay. We're going to look at those 10 horns. Right? Now, what you see here is a list of countries in the European Union as of 2023. Why, you might ask? Why, King Marcus, are we looking at the list of countries in the European Union in 2023? Well, this is why. I'm going to tell you who these 10 horns are. And you're going to notice these 10 horns are the first 10 nations of the European Union. Now, all this makes sense when you go and you look at Revelation 18, and it says that all the people that got drunk with the wine of what is Babylon, is referred to as Babylon, what you know as America. They looked in astonishment, saying, and this was in the Revelation of John. Like I said, it gets a little more detail, saying, Babylon, Babylon, that great city has fallen. Has fallen, right? But let's look at these 10 horns, because these are some of the allies that drank of the wine and partook in the fornications of Babylon. And you're going to find out this small horn is Babylon. We're going to break it all down. Let's get these 10 horns first. These 10 horns, pen and paper ready, please, Israel. Belgium, France, Germany, Luxembourg, Italy, Greece, the Netherlands, Denmark, the United Kingdom, and Ireland. Those nations make up those 10 horns on that beast. Now look at how diverse this beast has become. Because see, these places that I just named off, they weren't called those back when Roman Greco Empire was, but these grew out of that fourth beast. These 10 horns grew out of that fourth beast, right? So let's look at this. The European Union, or EU, as it's more commonly called, is a group of 27 nations in Europe formed in the aftermath of World War II. The first batch of countries joined in 1957. Now, I want y'all to pay attention to these dates, because I'm going to touch on something else that happened in 1948. I'm going to touch on that a little later on. There's a reason for that. But look at these dates. None of these say before Christ or AD, right? So time is going along when we're reflecting back on Daniel 7. You saw where it went from kingdom to kingdom or dominance to dominance. Time is going on in the revelation, in the dream that Daniel had that's recorded in chapter 7, right? The first batch of countries joined in 1957, including Germany, one of the 10 that I named, France, one of the 10 that I named, Italy, one of the 10 that I named, Belgium, one of the 10 that I named, Luxembourg, one of the 10, and the Netherlands, right? Way back then, Daniel saw the first 10 of the European Union. Didn't notice what he was looking at. Had no idea he was even looking at the Roman Greco Empire or any of the empires for that matter. He didn't know that what he saw when he saw the Babylonians and he saw these wings being plucked off. He didn't know that that was the Babylonians conquering the Assyrians. The Babylonian Empire conquering the Assyrian Empire. He had no idea, right? I want to go from there to right here. I want to go right here, right? Because we saw some of the countries that I named off, right? Let's see if all those countries fall in here. We saw Belgium, we saw France, we saw Germany, we saw Luxembourg, Italy, right here at number 7. Greece, you see right, where is Greece? Where is Greece? Number 9, there's Greece, number 9. The Netherlands, you see the Netherlands right here at number 22. Denmark. Where is Denmark? Number 21, Denmark, number 21. The United Kingdom. Where is the United Kingdom? Where is the UK? I know I'm just overlooking them. They're in here. I'm overlooking them some kind of way. I don't know how. And then there's Ireland. Where is Ireland? Let me see if I can. Ireland's number 15. Where's the UK? Let's go here. Let's get a little information about the EU. The European Union is a supra national political and economic union of 27 members that are located primarily in Europe. The union has a total of 4.2 million square kilometers and an estimated total population of over 448 million. That sounds like the breakdown of a kingdom, a domination. That's crazy. The EU has often been described as sui generis political entity without precedent or comparison, combining the characteristics of both a federation and a confederation. I want to drop down here to where it says the union. The union was established with its citizenship when the Maastricht Treaty came into force in 1993 and was subsequently incorporated as an international law judicial person upon entry into force of the Treaty of Lisbon in 2009. But its beginnings may be traced to its earliest predecessors, incorporated primarily by a group of founding states known as the Inner Six: Belgium, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and West Germany at the start of modern institutionalized European integration in 1948 and onwards, namely to the Western Union, or WU, the International Authority of Ruhr, the IAR, the European Coal and Steel Community, ECSC, the European Economic Community, EEC, and European Community, EC, and the European Atomic Energy Community, Euratom, established respectively by the 1948 Treaty of Breches, the 1948 London Six Power Conference, the 1951 Treaty of Paris, the 1957 Treaty of Rome, and 1957 Euratom Treaty. These increasingly amalgamated bodies, later known collectively as the European Communities, have grown since, along with their legal successor, the EU, both in size through accessions of further 21 states, as well as in power through acquisitions of various policy areas to their remit by the virtue of above mentioned treaties, as well as numerous other ones, such as the modified Brussels Treaty, the Merger Treaty, the Single European Act, the Treaty of Amsterdam, and the Treaty of Nice. In 2012, the EU was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize. After the creation by 6 states, 22 other states joined the Union in 1973 through 2013. The United Kingdom became the only member state to leave in 2020. They were a part of, that's why they weren't showing on. I was like, I know I'm supposed to have them in here. They were a part of it. They were a part of those 10 horns. They were a part of those 10 horns that Ezra was referring to. So when we were reading, let's go back to the Bible. Let's go back to the Bible, because now you know who those 10 horns were. If you didn't write them down, I'll call them again. The 10 horns on the fourth beast were Belgium, France, Germany, Luxembourg, Italy, Greece, the Netherlands, Denmark, the UK, and Ireland. Those were the 10 horns that both Daniel and Ezra saw, but it was broken down a little more for Ezra than it was for Daniel. So let's go back to the Bible. Let's go back to the Bible. And I want to look at this. We're gonna start looking at the small horn and the three horns that were plucked up by the root, right? But let's first go to Revelation 17 and 11. Let's look at this small horn just a little bit. Just a little bit. We're gonna go to Revelation 17 and verse 11. So we can pinpoint who this little horn is. And the beast that was and is not, and he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goeth in perdition. This is giving a little key about who that little horn is. This is going into, let's go to verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, 10 nations, 10. Remember, I said when you see kings, you might as well say nations, empires, or kingdoms. Five are fallen, and one. Wait a minute, where am I? I'm at 12. Yeah. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Wait a minute, verse 12. No kingdom as of yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. There's one place that is said in 1 hour. Still talking about this little horn in 1 hour. All these plagues will come. You can read it in Revelation 18. We're talking about America. All right. This is talking about America. What this is talking about is the 10 common markets, which are those 10 that I gave you, more commonly known as the EU. But this one little horn is America. Right? Let's go to Revelation chapter 13. Revelation chapter 13. And we're going to get verses. No. Let's go back to Daniel 7 and 8. Oh, no, I want to get this. I do kind of want to get this. We're going to go back to Daniel 7. We're going to go back to Daniel 7. Because I'm going to end up getting that anyway. I remember I'm going to end up getting that anyway. Let's go back to Daniel 7. We're going to go back to Daniel 7. Right? So the little horn is speaking of America. Well, then that leads, let's go to verse 8. Verse 8. Then that leads, well, if the little horn is America, then what were these 3 horns that was plucked up by the roots? Well, I'm going to tell you. In fact, let me stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to share my screen to this. And that those 3 are going to be France, Spain, and guess where that 3rd horn came straight from? Britain. The American, well, let's see what role Spain, France, and the Netherlands play during American Revolution. Right. The American Revolution was one of the most potent uprisings in the 18th century. The uprising was the revolt and overthrow of the British. There's that horn coming up out of that third horn, Britain. Colonial rule in the 13 colonies and foundation of the world's first federal republic, right? So these three horns that this little horn is coming out of was Spain, France, and Britain. That's what those three horns and the little horn is. So you got the 10 horns, the EU, that's all of America's, some of America's allies in the EU, right? Then you got Spain, which is part of those same 10. But these are the three horns directly that the little horn is coming out of, right? That were plucked up by the root, right? So now, let's go back to verse 8. Let's stop sharing. Let's go back to verse 8. Now, I wanna address this real fast, right? Because it says here in verse 8, and behold, in this horn were eyes of man and a mouth speaking great things, right? That's because these are men. These are men. Now, let's go to Ecclesiastes 3 and 18, because I said earlier to remember about that word beast, and now you're seeing I'm saying men, right? Let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 18. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 18. And it reads, I said in mine heart concerning the estates of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and they might see that they themselves are beasts. So all those beasts were actually, they weren't beasts, right? They were men, kingdoms, empires led by a man, right? I just wanted to get that because a lot of people look at Daniel 7, they think they reading about some mythical beasts. No, these were empires that and even the horns were not real horns. They were different nations as you know them today. All right. So although the revelation of Daniel speaks of beasts, they represent men and kingdoms and rulers of kingdoms, right? Because it even goes kind of and gets a little detail when you look at the Greeks, when it says it had 4 heads, it had 4 generals. They were the head of it after Alexander the Greek passed. They were the heads. These were men, though. Although they're being referred to as the parts of a beast, they were all men. Now, you notice, let's go back to Daniel 7, verse 8. Go back to Daniel 7 and 8, where it says, and a mouth speaking great things. I say, remember that word great. Let's think, just put just really just contextually, right? When you hear that word great, right? What's the first thing that comes to your mind, right? And there was a slogan not too long ago, was make America great again. First, America was never great. But that is a great thing that that America would say. But let's look at some of the other things that some of these men have said. Things like they are gods, right? You can read in Revelation where Babylon boasts to the point that it says, I'm a queen that sits alone on a throne and no one will overthrow me. That is the mindset of these, and that's very blasphemous, as if they can't be overthrown. I mean, we read back in the foundation of scriptures that the Most High replaces kings with kings as he see fit, not I sit here and can't nobody overthrow me, nobody or anything, right? Other things, you know, that they're Christians, you know, what percent of America? I'm just curious. I'm going to look this up myself. What percent of America are Christians, right? When the real Christians, right, who were first mentioned were during when Antiochus was in power. Those were Israelites. Even down to, listen to this, people saying that they are the Israelites, or that they are Israel, mentioned in, as it's mentioned in the Bible, right? A bunch of blasphemies. Now, I want to stop sharing my screen since we kind of talking about Babylon, or America as you know it. I'm going to share my screen to this. Now, you know that being an Israelite, that's by blood, right? Let's look at what Trump, in his, this is the language of his, and I have this actual executive order on anti-Semitism. If you definitely want a copy of it, just get with me on Instagram or email me and I can email it to you. But I want you to look at this. I want to read this. As first reported, the New York Times on Tuesday, the order formally calls on government departments enforcing Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. So they're going by, Trump is saying he's going to go by what the Jewish people say anti-Semitism is. The order calls for the enforcement of Title VI against prohibited forms of discrimination rooted in anti-Semitism. If those people even knew their actual biblical nationality, they are not. The majority of them are not even of Shem. But let me keep reading. As vigorously as against all other forms of discrimination prohibited by Title VI. The order also calls on departments enforcing the order also calls on departments enforcing Title VI to consider contemporary examples of anti-Semitism identified by the IHRA to the extent that any examples might be useful as evidence of discriminatory intent. Now listen to this. Initial reporting indicated that the order would include language defining Judaism as a national origin. Now, they refer to Judaism as people who keep the law, statutes, and commandments. They say that and Judaism is historically recorded as a religion, right? But people that keep the law, statutes, and commandments that are the real Jews, that's through a bloodline. They're saying that anyone that says they doing it, they can now say that they are of a national origin. They can say that they are something that they are not. What a great thing to come from their mouth, right? Now let's look at this. Let's look at this. Again, this is the executive order. I can email this to anybody. This is just for anybody that wanted to know word for word what it says, and it does say that if someone practices as the Jews of old, as the Israelites, they can just call themselves now. It's a national origin now. That is what democracy has said. So let me share my screen again. Let me share my screen again. Going back to the Bible. Let's go to Revelation. Let's go to Revelation. Go to Revelation chapter 13, and we're going to get verse 6. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. Now, let me break this down. Basically, this is referring to people that blaspheme the Most High, blaspheme his name. His tabernacle, Israel, is you. That's why there's the commandment, don't defile the temple, as that's where he's to dwell. That's you, Israel. And them that dwell in heaven. Let's go to Isaiah. Again, they blaspheme. They saying great things, right? Very blasphemous. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 14. Isaiah chapter 14. And I want to get verses 13 and 14. Isaiah chapter 14, verses 13 and 14. Let's read this. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. This place and these types of people, a lot of this is Esau and Edom. Blaspheming his name, right? Blaspheming his name. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 35. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 30. And we're going to get back to Daniel chapter 7. I got to get some examples of what exactly Daniel was speaking of. So let's go to Ezekiel. We're going to get chapter 35, and we're getting verses 12 through 15. Ezekiel 35 and 12 through 15. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Now, this is the Most High. And that I have heard all the blasphemy which thou hast spoken against the mountains of Israel, saying, they are laid desolate, they are given us to consume. Thus with your mouth ye have boasted against me, and have multiplied your words against me. I have heard them. The Most High, he understands. Well, the Most High's understanding and his wisdom, he knows of these things, and he's not forgotten them. Verse 14, thus saith the Lord God, when the whole earth rejoiceth, I will make thee desolate. And thou didst rejoice in the inheritance of the house of Israel. This is to all the other nations. Because it was desolate, so I will do unto thee. Thou shalt be desolate, O Mount Seir. This is talking to a direct people, because the people that dwelt in Mount Seir, and it's finna, the most I finna say, and all Idumea, even all of it, that's Esau. And they shall know that I am the Lord, right? But you saw where it says the whole earth. So I want to go real quick. I want to go to Psalms. I want to go to Psalms, and I want to go to chapter 83. Psalms chapter 83. And I want to get verses 1 through 5. So these people that blaspheme, just like the people that say they are Jews and are not, they're people on the earth, right? You saw it said all of the earth, right? Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God, for lo, thine enemies, those who blaspheme you, those who say great things, make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, the tabernacle, the temple. They've taken crafty counsel against them, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. I want you all to really pay attention to what Daniel saw. Daniel saw in a little more detail even what this is saying. It started making numbers like 10, and the 10 common, or the 10 that started the EU, and the one from the 3. It got a little more detail. Daniel was saying all these dominations and a whole bunch of enemies of Israel. It's the reason why later on he say how low it made his heart feel. But we gonna get there. We gonna get there. Let's go back to Daniel now. Let's go back to Daniel 7. Let's go back to Daniel 7. And I'm gonna kind of get a little from where we are now, right? So we went over the 10 horns, we went over the 3 horns and the small horn. So then in verse 9, and I want y'all to see how time has been flowing in this revelation that Daniel see. Again, it started with the Assyrian Empire being conquered by the Babylonian Empire, that then was conquered by the Persians and the Medes, that then was conquered by the Greeks, that then merged with the Romans, right? So time is passing. Then he sees these 10 horns, and then there's this small horn coming out of 3 horns. Time is constantly passing. That's why I said make note of those dates. I said in part 1, try to keep a little timeline going as y'all look through part 1 and part 2, and y'all start seeing how the time is progressing. Everything that he saw and how it actually was happening in real time and how it progressed, right? So let's go to verse 9. I beheld because we went over the 10 horns. We went over the one horn, the small horn coming out of the little horn. So let's go to verse 9. I beheld till the thrones were cast down. So till all of those, his revelation went to all of those things had been cast down, right? And that day, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheel as burning fire. So time is progressing all the way till what you're reading about now, what Daniel was seeing now, the return of Yahweh, right? Now Daniel has fast forwarded in time. He's seen the rise and fall of all these dominances, of all these kingdoms, right? All the way up to the return of Yahweh, right? Let's prove it. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 66. Because remember these key words. Let's go back to Daniel 7, verse 9. Some key words here. First, it gives his description the same as you read in Revelation 1 and verse 14. But you see the throne and a fiery flame, his wheels, the chariots, as burning fire. Right? Let's go to Isaiah chapter 66. And again, Ezra saw something really, really close to that, almost identical. And so did John. All of Revelation speaks of it. The whole book, pretty much. Right? Speaks of the revelation, the revealing of to John the Revelator. So let's go to Isaiah. We're going to go to Isaiah chapter 66, right? And we're going to get verses 15 through 20, all right? We're going to get this real fast. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, all the nations of earth. And the slain of the Lord shall be many. Right? We're getting all the way down to verse 20. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination and the mouse shall be consumed together, saith the Lord, not saith King Marcus. For I know their works and their thoughts. It shall come that I will gather all nations and tongues, and they shall come and see my glory. This is being proclaimed by the Most High himself. And I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape of them unto the nations, to Tarshish, Pool and Lud, that draw the bow, to Tubal and Javan, to the isles afar off, that have not heard my fame, neither have seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles. And they shall bring all your brethren, this is talking about Israel, for an offering unto the Lord out of all nations, upon horses and in chariots and in litters, and upon mules and upon swift beasts, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, saith the Lord, as the children of Israel bring an offering in a clean vessel into the house of the Lord. So he's seeing what Daniel was seeing was the return of Yahweh, right? That's what Daniel was saying, right? But you look, let's look here, and you'll see that this fire and all this destruction, right? So let's go to Zechariah. Let's go to Zechariah. I just want to prove that this is what, I see Zechariah, that this is what, at this point in time in his vision, Daniel was seeing. Let's go to Zechariah chapter 5. We're going to get verses 1 through 4. Then I turned and lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll, a chariot. And he said unto me, what seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll. The length thereof is 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof 10 cubits. Then said he unto me, this is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth. For everyone that stealeth shall be cut off as of on this side according to it, and everyone that sweareth shall be cut off as on that side according to it. I will bring it forth, saith the Lord of hosts. And it shall enter into the house of the thief, and into the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name, those blasphemies again, speaking great things again, and it shall remain in the midst of his house. But listen to what's going to go on in this house. And shall consume it with the timber thereof and the stones thereof, right? So you see some things about some buildings, right? So let's look at, because Yahweh Shah kind of referenced, he was given a prophecy even to the 12 when they were walking, right? And I pull these three a lot, but I want y'all to, I want Israel, I want you to understand how closely knitted, how all this plays in with one another, right? So let's go to Matthew chapter 24, right? Because the last thing we saw was about some buildings, right? Let's go to Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24, right? I want to get verses 1 and 2 first. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple. Now, this was during the Roman time. Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to shew him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, let's see what Yahweh Shah said. See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now, Yahweh Shah just said about something, these buildings being thrown down, all these great wonders that these men have built, right? Yahweh, but the Most High has said before, especially about Idumea, Esau, how they say they are a impoverished people, and they shall build. And the Most High said, and I will throw down. He's saying, he's echoing the same sentiment that his father said, right? So I want to drop down because I come to hear a lot. This is where you can find about the wars and rumors of wars and all of that. But let's look at some of the things that Yahushua was talking about, because a lot of this is pretty much some of the same things that Daniel saw. Watch this. I want to drop to verse 8. All these are the beginning of sorrows, right? So there are going to be some sorrows that began for Israel. I want to drop down to verse 13. But he that shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved. Yahushua was saying this way back then, and I am telling you, this same thing is going to be applicable. That's why he said, verily, I tell you, what you see now, this ain't going to be here. It's going to be thrown down. He was telling them of a prophecy. He was telling them of some of the same prophecy that even Daniel saw. So let's drop down to verse 29 and 31, because remember, Daniel said, 29 through 31, Daniel said he saw Yahushua with fire and a fire wheel. Let's see what Yahushua said to even the apostles. And you can find this also in Mark and in Luke, and we're going to look at it. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and glory. I want to drop down from there to verse 35. Heaven and earth shall pass away. Remember, Yahushua is saying this because we're going to go back to Daniel 7, and you're going to see some very close things to this that Yahushua is saying. Daniel said it way in the Old Testament. Esdras said it. The Old Testament was written, then the Apocrypha. Ezra said it in the Apocrypha. And then in the New Testament, Yahushua is saying it. And then John said it. Well, let's keep going. Let's keep reading. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. Remember that foundational scriptures that said that these things are going to happen and shall not lie. Keep all that in mind, because when these things happen, it's going to truly happen, right? Now, let's drop down to verse 50 and 51. The Lord of their servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, no man knows. And shall cut him asunder and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So Yahushua is talking about when he's to return and the results of when he shall return. Also, that it behooves, he was telling the apostles, it behooves y'all to be ready. Even I don't know when I'm returning. Only the Father knows. So let's go to Mark. We're going to see. We're going to go to Mark. And then we're going to go to Luke. And then I want to touch on something in Ezra. Then we're going to go back to Daniel. So let's go. Let's go to Mark chapter 13. Again, this is a precept to what we just read. We're going to get verses 1 and 2. We're going to see if it changed. And he went out of the temple. One of the disciples saith unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. Let's look at what Yahushua said. And Jesus answering, saying unto him, seest thou these great buildings? He asked him a question. You see these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Same thing that Matthew recalled from this same interaction, right? Let's drop to verse 8. Let's see if anything changed. Verse 8. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in diverse places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows, just like we read back in Matthew. Right? Let's drop down to verse 13. Verse 13 reads, and ye should be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved. Same thing we read back in Matthew, right? Let's drop down to verse 24 through 27, right? Because we're going to look at the coming of Yahushua. He's going to be talking about his own coming. But in those days, after the tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Same thing. Same thing. Let's drop down now to verses 31 and 32. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. But on that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son. He's saying again, I don't even know. But the Father, only the Most High knows. Let's drop down to verse 35 and 37. We're going to look at the results of the passing of the way of and some advice that Yahushua has. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the matter of the house cometh, at even or at midnight, or at the cold crocking, or in the morning. Lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping, and what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. Now again, the Most High revealed this to Daniel. He revealed something extreme. I mean, almost exact same thing with a little more detail to Ezra, and then even more so detail to John. And here's Yahushua professing the exact same thing as he walked here on earth during the Roman Greco Empire, during that fourth beast. During the fourth beast. Let's go back. Let's go now to Luke. Go now to Luke chapter 21. Go to Luke. We're going to go to chapter 21. We're going to give verses 5 and 6 first. Let's see if anything changed. And as some spake of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts. So they admiring the beauty of these buildings, right? Again, listen to what he said. Listen to what Yahushua said. As for these things which ye behold, the days will come in which there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. He said the same thing, right? Let's see. Let's go and let's see if he say anything about enduring. So let's drop down to verses. First, let's see if he say anything about sorrows. Let's drop down to verses 12 and 13. But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers by my name's sake, and it shall turn to you for a testimony. That's a sorrow. That's some sorrows. Let's see if anything changed as far as him talking about his return. Let's drop down now to, let's see if anything changed about enduring. Let's drop down to verse 18 and 19. But there shall not a hair of your head perish. In your patience possesses ye your soul. He that endureth to the end shall be saved. Same thing. Let's drop down and see if he says anything about his coming, as Luke recalled it. Let's drop down to verse 33. Well, verse 27 through 28. Verse 27, and then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. He's only saying this to Israelites. He was only sent for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Let's drop on down. Let's see if heaven and earth should pass away. Let's go to verse 33. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. Same thing. Let's drop down and see some results. Verse 35 and 36. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. So now let's go to 2nd Esdras. Let's go to, because we saw it, Daniel saw it, but we're going to go back and read it again just to make sure it was the coming of Yahweh that he saw. Let's go to 2nd Esdras chapter 13. 2nd Esdras chapter 13. We're going to see what Ezra saw. 2nd Esdras chapter 13. We're going to get verses 3 through 11. And I beheld, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven. Y'all know who that's talking about? You know who Ezra talking about right here? He's talking about Yahweh. And when he turned his countenance to look, all the things tremble that were seen under him. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it filleth the fire. Verse 5, and after this I beheld, and lo, there were gathered together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of the heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea. But I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain and flew upon it. But I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not. Verse 8, we go on to verse 11. And after this I beheld, and lo, all they were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet durst fight. They were scared, but still tried to wage war with Yahweh. Let's keep reading to make sure this is Yahweh, and this is talking about the coming of Yahweh. Let's keep reading. Verse 10, but only I saw that he sent out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests. Verse 11, and they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burned them up, everyone, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude, nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. When Ezra saw that day, it scared him. Let's go back to Daniel 7. Let's make sure that that's what Daniel saw, because Daniel gonna say something about his continents. Let's see this. Let's go back to Daniel 7. Daniel 7, and we gonna go to verse. Let's go back to verse 9 real fast, because I want to read this. I beheld the thrones were cast down. Now, that's what Daniel saw. He saw that everything was cast down. And the ancients of days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him out of his mouth. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were open. Now, I'm definitely sure they're talking about the second coming of Yahweh. Because these same books John refers to in Revelation. Let's keep reading. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, that little horn, I beheld even till the beast was slain, meaning that everything about that domination, including the horns, was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. Right? All the way down to that little horn. That little horn is Babylon. That little horn is what you know as America. You can read in Revelation chapter 18 all about it. And it ends just like this: a burning flame. Smoke and a burning flame. Just like what Ezra said. But that's John speaking it. And now we're reading it as Daniel saw it. Verse 12. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away. Remember that key, that foundational scripture about the Most High takes kings and replaces kings. And I said, you can write down that word kings and write down nations and kingdoms and empires. Let's go back. Let's see about that. I remember we read how the beast is referring to man, right? As concerning the rest of the beasts, or those other kingdoms ran by men, they had their dominion taken away. Why? I gave that in a foundational scripture as to why the Most High did it. Yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. Verse 13, I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion. So this is talking about the new kingdom after the earth and heaven had passed away. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. He's seeing some of the same thing that Ezra saw, the same things that John saw, which almost the whole book of Revelation is talking about. Let's keep reading. Verse 15, remember I said that Daniel going to talk about his continents, like Ezra talked about his continents when he saw it. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit, in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled. I came near unto one of them that stood by. So what Daniel is telling you is, while he's having a dream, you ever had a dream and you're in the dream? Daniel's in the dream of this revelation, right? So he talked to somebody near him, right? Like, hey, tapped him on the shoulder. This is what he asked. He said, I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. Man, what is all of this about? So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the thing. Let's see what the interpretation of Daniel 7, this revelation was. These great beasts, which are four kings. Remember, I said where you see kings, you can say nations, you can see empires, kingdoms, which shall rise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Right? That's what the person in the dream tells Ezra. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, break in pieces, and stamp the residue with his feet. Remember, said to stamp the residue with his feet, meaning other people started doing the customs of this beast, of this kingdom, of this dominion, right? And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose looks was more stout than his fellows. Let's talk about that little horn again. This little horn is said to be the superpower of the earth. The biggest, the stoutest thing on the earth, isn't it? In Babylon, in America, referred to as that. Let's keep reading. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them until the Ancient of Days came. See, now Ezra is breaking down what all he saw. He said all these things happened. All those dominions came and went. And then, but this little horn and his 10 and his allies in those 10 horns, and many, many more now, right? Who drank and fornicated, drank of that same wine with Babylon, right? With modern day Babylon, which you know is America, right? All the way until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, so this dude is still talking to him. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms and shall devour the whole earth and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, which they did. I gave you the name of those 10 kings or nations. And another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. He did the Revolutionary War. Right? He basically, Babylon broke away from France, Spain, and Britain. That small home, right? Subdued those 3 kings. Right now, today, Britain, Spain, and France say that Babylon, like many others, are the superpower of the earth, has subdued them. Let's keep going. And he shall speak great words against the Most High. Things like, I'm banning the Bible. It's okay to be in the ABC community. Hey, if you keep the Sabbath, it don't matter if you're of the bloodline or not. You can say that you're an Israelite. Blasphemous. Let me keep going. And shall wear out the saints of the Most High those sorrows, and think to change times and laws. Don't keep the Sabbath. Go to church on Sunday. A day is going to come when a day is going to come, and this can very well happen, where if you're keeping the Sabbath, you could be killed. Let's keep going. Trying to change times and laws. Same thing we read back in Psalms 83. Right? These enemies of not only Israel, but the Most High. It sums up to 17 of 18 biblical nationalities. Right? But let's keep going. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. A lot of people going to ask about. I'm going to break that down. Not today, because we've been here for a minute. I'm going to break that down. I'm going to break that times and time and times and dividing of time, because you see that somewhere else in the Bible. That's written somewhere else in the Bible. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven, which this will be the new heaven, shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations, I've gone over this word before. I'm gonna get the definition again today. But my cogitations, my meditation, much trouble me, and my countenance changed in me. I told you he was gonna talk about it. But I kept the matter in my heart. Not only did he keep it in his heart, just like the Most High said to do back in Habakkuk, he recorded it. What Daniel saw, for lack of better terms, and I'm going to break this down as simply as possible. Daniel saw a glimpse of time through time. He saw dominations as they rose and fell. He saw kingdoms as they rose and fell. The best way that he could describe these kingdoms was as he did. He called them certain beasts, but he gave some very key details about these beasts, which make it very easy to actually pinpoint, well, who he's talking about and what he's talking about. Right? Daniel saw the rise and fall of all these dominions, of all these different biblical nationalities, all the way up until the everlasting one, the one that lasted forever, that will last forever, the one that is still yet to come. However, things are slow. They remember we looked at a foundational verse that said In fact, let's just go to it. Let's go back to Habakkuk. Let's go back to Habakkuk. Because these things are looking like they're starting to happen. These wars and rumors of wars, these things are happening. You see what's going on in Israel? My beloved brother Mike, King Mike Malice, he did just talk about First Thessalonians. That's very true. That was in the Bible. Just as sure as they signed a peace treaty. Not even 3 months, like less than 2.5 months later. Let's look at verse 3. First, the Lord, the Most High, says to write these revelations down. That's why Daniel did. Let's look at verse 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, see, for a long time, these prophecies been tarrying, but it's looking like they're coming into fruition. And they're happening swift. They're happening fast. They're coming back to back to back. Wait for it, because it will surely come. And when it comes, it will not tarry. It's going to come back to back. They're going to come just like they're coming. What Daniel saw in chapter 7, I know I said, and it has already happened. Somebody asked, when you finish that chapter 7, will you do chapter 8? I will, but I'm not going to promise you that's going to be next. Truth for thought. What Daniel saw in chapter 7, from the Rudy to the Tootie, was what has happened on earth ever since, not the domination of the Egyptians, but he saw those who conquered the Egyptians. He also saw those that conquered them. And he saw each of those dominations. He saw all of those kingdoms up to the everlasting kingdom. That is what Daniel 7 is about. Those beasts are kingdoms. Men. Beasts, the beasts are men. The kings that headed up these nations or these kingdoms, these dominances, that is what Daniel saw. So if you're catching part 2 but didn't see part 1, it behooves you to get to part 1 and then come back to part 2. But that is the entirety of the breakdown of Daniel chapter 7. Now, Israel, I ask again that you keep in prayer everyone that was in the prayer list. And the greater part of it was on part 2, the greater part of the breakdown of this. But it was a lot. It was the majority of the meat was in part 1. So Israel, first, I'm happy to be back off break. I will be having a Truth Thought coming out next Sabbath. Be it the Most High will. So with that, be it the Most High will. Till next time, it's your beloved brother, King Marcus. I bid you Shabbat Shalom, and I love you. Till next time, Shalom.